Good morning, Bimblers. And you join me at Warrington Central train station. You'll have to excuse my voice. I'm getting a cold, which is very unfortunate because it's Bimblism Live on Tuesday. It's Saturday now. If you're watching this at Bimblism Live, I survived. But I needed to come out today to do a very special video. It's something I'm calling a Day Ranger 5-Stop Challenge. The basic idea is you buy a Day Ranger for the trains. In my case, I'm getting a Cheshire Day Ranger because I'm a Cheshire lad. You've got to visit 5 different stops and you've got to complete 5 different tasks. You've got to get a pint, you've got to go for a paddle, you've got to visit a museum, visit a monument and buy a speciality food. Let me unwrap the rules. You must visit a different stop to complete all 5 tasks. So that means you've got to go to at least 5 different places. You can't count your station of origin as one of the stops. If you're starting out your journey in Wigan, you can't get a pie barm on the way and count it as your speciality food. You don't have to complete the tasks in the order that I said. I'm not expecting anyone to go and get a pint at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is about what time it is right now. Let me unwrap the tasks. You've got to get a pint, a beverage of your choice. It doesn't have to be a pint of beer. Could be a gin and tonic. If you don't drink alcohol, well, that's fine too. You can just buy a coffee or a smoothie or a milkshake or a tea. The only thing is, it's got to be from an independent business. Can't be from a chain place. You've got to go for a paddle. That's putting your feet in a body of water. You can't count a puddle. You've got to visit a museum. I'll accept an art gallery, a castle or a zoo. It's got to be educational. No fun fairs or theme parks. You've got to visit a monument. That can be a statue, a plaque or a sculpture. Again, it's got to be educational. Something la-di-da. And lastly, you've got to get a speciality food. That can be an ice cream from a local dairy or an incredible burger from some independent pub. The only thing is, it's got to be unique to that place. You can't just go in KFC and get a Zinger Tower burger. And you can't go in the local Spar and buy a Cornetto. It's got to be pertinent to the place that you're in. So all that said, let's go and have a paddle.
New Brighton.
Well, Bimblers, in terms of having a paddle on our Cheshire Day Ranger, New Brighton is the only traditional choice. We could have had a brief dip in a lake or a reservoir, or in a river or a canal. But the seaside's better, isn't it? And you might be saying to yourself, New Brighton on a Cheshire Day Ranger. All of the Wirral used to be part of Cheshire. I mean, it's south of the River Mersey, isn't it? North of the River Mersey used to be Lancashire. If you've got a problem with that, you can take it up with William the Conqueror. He outlined all of that in the Domesday Book of 1086, and he said that New Brighton was in Cheshire, so it counts. If you were going to talk to Proto-Germanic people, they'd say this was Wales. In fact, that's how Wallasey got its name round the corner. Same origin as Wales. In Germanic, it means foreigner. That meant the Britons who lived in Wales. These days it's classed as the Metropolitan Borough of Wirral, and it has been since 1974. It's been home to paddling for many, many years, since Victorian times, when they all got into jumping in the sea and drinking seawater and taking in the air. They stopped drinking the seawater. It goes down in history with the other things they used to throw down the gullet, like radium and cocaine in soft drinks. New Brighton used to be home to the tallest structure in Britain. That was from 1900 to 1919, and it was called the New Brighton Tower. A lot like Blackpool Tower, only 15 metres taller. It was 173 metres tall. But the reason why it was dismantled in 1919 was apparently because of the First World War. All the fellas went off to fight and no one was maintaining the tower. Despite that, when they dismantled the tower, they kept the ballroom underneath. In 1969 it burnt down, so it's no more. It's just a nice patch of grass these days. Anyway, it's time for me to dry off my feet, get as much sand off my feet as I can, and go and see a monument. Let's Bimble.
Chester.
I'm looking forward to seeing him. He's my saviour, he's my lord, he's my friend.
Chester could have been a very good candidate for a museum. Plenty of museums round here. There's the Roman Discovery Centre and the Cheshire Military Museum, and something called Sick to Death, which is all about old-fashioned medicine. Also, they've got the Roman walls, haven't they, surrounding the city. That's educational enough for me. We chose a monument though, and we could have visited several monuments in Chester. There's a wild boar outside of the market, and a rather avant-garde statue that has something to do with happiness and industry, apparently. Unfortunately, the monument that I chose to talk about has a street preacher in the way, spouting on about Jesus through a little tiny speaker on his belt. So he's rather scuppered my plans to be sat next to the elephant while I give this piece to camera. So I thought, what can I do? Maybe I should come to the cathedral, which is where he should be shouting on, isn't it? We came to see a 1 metre tall bronze baby elephant, and it was donated by Chester Zoo. You usually think about Chester Zoo when you think about Chester, don't you? It opened in 1931, and it was the brainchild of a George Mottershead. His family had a market garden near Crewe, and he used to collect lizards and snakes and plants and insects and things like that, you know, little things. The surname Mottershead may reappear again later on in the Bimble, and might explain how George Mottershead got the money to start up a zoo. He found some land on the outskirts of Chester. It was called Oakfield Manor or Butter Hill, and it cost him £3,500 back in 1930. So that's about £180,000 in today's money. We could have visited the zoo as our museum task. I would have accepted that. In 2010, Chester Zoo donated a 1 metre tall bronze statue of a baby elephant called Janya, and it's supposed to mirror a statue they have at the gates of Chester Zoo of a much larger elephant. It also celebrates the birth of a real baby elephant at Chester Zoo. It's the perfect place to rant and rave about Jesus, or just to get on top of and ride when you're bladdered on a Friday night. So I've heard.
This train is formed of 11 coaches. Calling it Crewe.
Who did that? Well, the control was in neutral. You don't think so? Who's been around it? Me? You. You and over here. Don't talk to the operator, you don't go bosoms up.
I thought our choice of museum would be pertinent to the challenge at hand. Most people's mental reference to Crewe is hanging around the station for hours on end, waiting for your connection. A few times I've tried to venture in the town centre, but it's about a mile away from the station. You get halfway there and you think, I'm going to have to get back for my train. One place that's very near to the train station is Crewe Heritage Museum. That's all about the trains in Crewe. Crewe wasn't actually the first choice to build a station. The first choice was Winsford, but that plan fell through. And then they thought about Nantwich, but the landowners didn't want one. That's probably why Nantwich is so picturesque and Crewe's a bit, you know, grotty. The odd thing is that both those places ended up getting railways anyway, so they had railway stations, just not as large and impressive as Crewe Station. Crewe Station opened in 1837, and in 1838 they opened a hotel next door to it, the first of its kind. What a novel idea, a hotel next to a train station. The original line went between Birmingham and Dalham in Warrington, that's where I'm from. If you watched my last Bimble, I told you all about that. I told you the men that designed it were George Stephenson and Joseph Locke. In fact, we visited a bridge that may have been designed by one of those men. As soon as a station opened in Crewe, they opened other stations and other lines in Chester and Manchester and London, Sheffield, Leeds. You can get anywhere from Crewe. The Crewe Heritage Centre tells you all about it. Shows you all the big trains, Class 37 diesel locomotives, they're my favourite. Intercity 125s. They've got miniature trains, they've got model trains, they've even got an ice cream van. They've got signal boxes you can walk around and you can watch a fella demonstrate them. And there's a viewing platform to watch the real trains. Speaking of real trains, we best get one to get our speciality food. Let's Bimble.
Calling at Wilmslow, Stockport and Macclesfield.
Core Bimblers. It was nearly challenge failure then. The plan was to go to a place called Cheshire Cat, which is a cheese shop, and get some Cheshire cheese, you know, Cheshire Day Ranger, Cheshire cheese, and I'm buying it in Macclesfield. Unfortunately, I got to Macclesfield at 4:30. It takes a long time, all this filming business. And the cheese shop shut at 4 o'clock. Crisis stations. We nearly had to go to the local chip shop, Silktown, but then I seen Tres Burritos. So I got myself an artisan burrito from an independent store. So I suppose that counts. I could have also got a treacle tart. Macclesfield is known as Treacle Town to some people. And that goes back to a story from years ago, where a horse and cart carrying several barrels full of treacle upturned on the cobbled streets, and the treacle flowed out, and all the poor people came and started scooping it up, some of them into vessels and buckets and things like that, and some of the kids straight into their mouths. So I was going to try and find a treacle tart, but that wasn't to be either. Macclesfield is most famous for making silk buttons and the silk trade, hence the name of the local chip shop. The most prominent makers of those silk buttons were the Mottershead family. If you remember, in Chester, another Mottershead family started Chester Zoo. So I wonder whether that's where they got their money from. The silk trade. Cheshire is actually quite well known for the silk trade. Manchester was cotton, Cheshire was silk. Stockport, Congleton, Bollington and here in Macclesfield are very close to fast running streams. The River Bollin and the River Dane and the River Dean and the River Goyt, which eventually becomes the River Mersey. The silk was made by harvesting the cocoons of moth larvae. What they used to do is get the cocoons and soak them in warm water and then stretch out the gooey mess into the individual threads, thus making silk. Macclesfield is also famous for being home to the first Hovis bread factory. The bakery started with two fellas. That would be a baker from Stoke-on-Trent. We could have got there on our Cheshire Day Ranger. And a businessman from here in Macclesfield. And they set up a large factory. But we can't have a Hovis loaf as our speciality food. Could have got one of those from Heron Foods near my house.
Stockport only.
Well, Bimblers, that completes the challenge. A pint done in Stockport at a pub called the Cracked Actor. Overall successful, but I think I could have done better. Anyway, I'm just going to sup this, then it's definitely time to go home.
Quite like how it is.
Maybe it didn't work at the time, maybe it never did. A novelty improvement, left lonely as it gives. Or maybe it's the time that you closed both your eyes and you pouted your lips as you waited for mine in the soft red glow of your soft cold arms. Serotonin burnt holes through my veins to my heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it's the time that I wanted to say that my limbs won't move more than 2 feet away from your day glow side luminescent sparks. I could burst into flames from one beat from your heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. And I quite like how it is.